Velara stood at the edge of her ship, her long cloak flowing in the wind. Her silver eyes looked down at the green-blue planet below, Earth. Behind her stood two alien officers, waiting for her final words before the mission began. She nodded once. "Open the gate," she said softly. The door hissed open, and the most beautiful diplomat in the galaxy stepped onto human soil. She was not just beautiful in the way aliens saw beauty. She was perfect by human standards, too. Smooth skin that shimmered in sunlight, soft glowing. Hair that changed color slightly when she moved, and a voice that felt like music. Velara had been trained in more than 100 cultures, could speak every major galactic language, and knew how to bend minds with just a smile. She had done it before, many times. This mission was supposed to be easy. Her task was simple: charm a human negotiator named Daniel. Make him trust her. Make him agree to Earth joining the Galactic Council. She didn't need to fight. She didn't need to lie. She only had to win his heart. That's what she was best at. When Velara stepped into the Earth government building, all eyes turned to her. Some stared with awe, others with desire, and some with fear. She was used to this. With calm steps, she entered the meeting room. Daniel stood at the end of the table. He was taller than she expected, with quiet eyes and a tired face. But he stood straight and looked directly at her without blinking. "You must be the diplomat," Daniel said, his voice steady. Velara smiled. "And you must be the human negotiator," she said, tilting her head slightly. She expected him to react. Most did. Some blushed, others stuttered, a few couldn't speak at all. But Daniel just nodded and pulled out a chair for her. "Let's begin." The first hour was filled with formal talk. Rules, agreements, trade policies. Velara spoke clearly, using soft tones and gentle smiles. She leaned in slightly when she spoke. She laughed at the right times. She brushed his hand by accident. All parts of her training. But Daniel didn't react. No blush. No awkward smile. No flirting words. He just listened, asked questions, and wrote notes. Velara started to feel something strange. Not anger. Not shame. But confusion. When the meeting ended, Daniel stood up and said, "You seem tired. Would you like to take a walk in the garden before your next meeting?" This wasn't in the script. She was trained to control situations, not follow unexpected moves. Still, she agreed. "That sounds nice." They walked through a quiet garden behind the building. Flowers bloomed in strange shapes and soft colors. Birds sang gently above them. Velara kept glancing at Daniel, trying to read him. "You don't talk much," she said finally. "I talk when needed," he replied. "Words mean more when they're not wasted." She smiled again, but this time, it wasn't part of her training. It was real. "You are very different from others I've met." Daniel looked at her. "You probably say that to everyone." "No," she replied. "I don't." For a moment, they stood in silence. Then Daniel spoke again. "Do you enjoy this work? Being sent to other planets? Talking to strangers? Wearing masks?" Velara stopped walking, but no one had ever asked her that. It's my duty," she said. But even to her own ears, the words sounded hollow. They returned to the building, and Daniel thanked her for the walk. "We'll continue tomorrow," he said, then turned to leave. Velara stood alone for a while. She had done everything right. She had used every trick. Yet the human had not fallen. Not even slightly. And worse, she didn't feel victory. She felt something else: warmth, curiosity, even comfort. Back on her ship, Velara stared at her reflection in the mirror. For the first time, she wasn't sure who she was pretending to be and who she really was. This was supposed to be a simple mission, but now, everything felt different. Asterisk, a human she can't read. Velara had faced warlords, emperors, and cunning rulers, who all believed they could resist her. But she had always won, always bent their will without them even realizing it. Yet this one human, Daniel, was different. He didn't resist her with power or pride. He simply didn't play her game at all. And that disturbed her more than anything else. The next morning, she found herself walking slower than usual toward the meeting room. Her heart, if it could still be called that, beat with a strange rhythm. It wasn't fear. It wasn't desire. It was something in between. Daniel was already there, waiting with a cup of tea in his hand. He offered one to her. "This is earth-grown, from the high mountains of a place called Kashmir." Velara took the cup and nodded politely. But inside, she felt something twist. No alien had ever offered her something with meaning. Gifts were always tools, part of politics. But Daniel gave her tea like a host would to a guest, like he wanted her to feel welcome. I studied your species, she said softly as she sipped. Your history is violent. So many wars, even among yourselves. Daniel didn't look insulted. He simply nodded. Yes, and that's why we value peace now. We paid for it with blood. Velara stared at him. His words had no pride, no attempt to impress. Just truth. And again, she felt unprepared. Later that day, during a short break, Daniel offered to show her the river behind the government building. She agreed, though her guards warned her it wasn't part of the plan. She didn't care. They walked beside the water, the sound of it flowing over rocks filling the silence. Velara tried again. You know, she said with a small smile, many leaders in the galaxy would kill for a private walk with me. Daniel chuckled. I'm not like most leaders. You aren't a leader at all, she said, half joking. No, he agreed. Just a man trying to protect his people from bad deals. She stopped walking. You think I'm offering a bad deal? Daniel turned toward her. I think you're offering something too perfect. And perfection hides danger. For a long moment, they just stood there. Velara, the galaxy's top manipulator, didn't know what to say. She couldn't read him. Every move he made felt honest. Every word felt calm and unshaken. And somehow, that made her want to know more. That evening, she returned to her quarters and ignored the messages flashing on her console. The council wanted updates. They wanted progress. But all she could think about was how Daniel had picked a small flower from the riverside and handed it to a child playing nearby. Not for attention, not for show, just because he cared that I end her long life. She had never met anyone like him. Not human, not alien. She sat by the window and looked up at Earth's moon. Her mission was clear. Her training was strong. But her heart was confused. Why couldn't she read this man? And why did she suddenly want to? Velara didn't sleep that night. The mission starts to crumble. She had never hesitated before. Never. Velara was known across star systems as flawless, precise, unshakable. But now, as she stared at the message from the Galactic Council glowing on her screen, her fingers trembled slightly. Progress report overdue. Charm the human. Secure the agreement. Do not fail. Their words were sharp, cold, like the mission was all that mattered, and maybe it was. But ever since her second meeting with Daniel, things had started to feel different. She had come to Earth wearing confidence like armor. Now that armor was cracking piece by piece. She turned off the screen without replying. Later that day, she met Daniel again. This time, there was no meeting table, no documents, just a walk through a busy market street. Daniel had invited her to see what real life on Earth looked like. She had agreed, curious to understand why he avoided her beauty and charm like it meant nothing. The market was loud, colorful. People shouted prices, laughed, played music. Children ran past, giggling and waving at Velara like she was a glowing goddess from a storybook. She smiled at them, and when she looked at Daniel, she found him watching her, not with lust, but something softer, something dangerous, care. You seem relaxed today, he said as he handed her a piece of sweet fruit to try. She tasted it, and to her surprise, smiled. It's strange, but nice. Like us humans, he said with a quiet laugh. She studied his face, trying to find a lie. There. But he was telling the truth again. Always simple, always honest. It was maddening and comforting. They passed a small shop where an old woman was painting on glass. Daniel stopped. She lost her family in the old wars, he said softly. But now she paints beauty for strangers. She says it helps her heart. Velara didn't know what to say. Her people would have erased the pain, rewired the mind. But humans, they carried their pain and still smiled. That night, she sat alone in her room again. The council sent another message. Angrier this time. The human should be under your control by now. You were chosen for your perfection. Do not forget who you are. She replied with one line. He doesn't fall like the others. No response. Came back. For the first time in her diplomatic career, Velara didn't feel powerful. She felt small, conflicted, lost. The next day, Daniel invited her to a place outside the city. It was a quiet cliff overlooking a lake. There were no guards, no security drones, no witnesses. Just the sound of water and wind. Why are you really here? He asked gently. What do they want from us? Velara opened her mouth to lie, to say the words she had memorized. But nothing came out. She lowered her eyes and said softly, I was sent to make you trust me. To charm you. To make you agree. Daniel nodded slowly. And is that what you're doing? She shook her head. No, she whispered. I don't know what I'm doing anymore. He looked at her, long and quiet. Then he said something she didn't expect. Maybe that's a good thing. She laughed. A real laugh. Not one taught by her instructors. Heat of the unexpected. The night air was cooler than usual, but Valera's skin felt hot. Too hot. She stood alone on the balcony of her guest quarters, her glowing fingers resting on the stone railing, her eyes locked on the stars above Earth. Something inside her was changing. Something no training had prepared her for. She tried to focus. The council had gone silent after her last message. Maybe they were disappointed. Maybe they were watching. Either way, Velara knew she was failing the mission. Worse, she didn't care as much as she should. Her thoughts kept drifting back to that moment on the lake cliff. The way Daniel had looked at her. Not with desire. Not even with confusion. But with quiet understanding. Like he saw the real her. Even when she didn't. She didn't sleep that night. The next day, a diplomatic visit was scheduled to an old Earth city hit by war long ago. Velara and Daniel would tour it together. For unity, the Earth leaders had said. She agreed, though her heart beat faster than normal. Not from fear, but from something she couldn't name. As they walked through broken streets now rebuilt with flowers and murals, she noticed something odd. Daniel walked closer than usual. His arm lightly brushed hers. Every time he spoke, her heart skipped. She tried to ignore it, to stay professional. But it wasn't working. Then came the collapse. They were standing under an old arch when the structure shook. Without warning, part of the stone roof gave way. Velara didn't even have time to think. Dust filled the air. A loud crack echoed. Something heavy fell toward her, but she didn't fall, because strong human arms pulled her back just in time. Daniel had tackled her, wrapping his arms around her and crashing to the ground with her in his grip. Her body landed on top of his. His heartbeat was loud against her chest. His scent, earthy, warm, human, surrounded her. For a moment, the world stopped. Velara didn't move that couldn't move. Their faces were inches apart. His hand still gripped her back, protective and firm. She stared into his eyes, and something deep inside her body reacted. Not her thoughts, not her training, her biology. Heat rushed through her veins. Her skin glowed faintly pink. Her breathing became short and shallow. Her body trembled, not in fear, but in something else. Something primal. She pushed away quickly, heart racing, face burning. Daniel sat up, brushing dust from his clothes. Are you all right? She nodded fast, avoiding his eyes. Yes, I just need air. She walked away, quickly, nearly running. Back in her room, she locked the door and pressed her hands to her chest. What was that? Her body systems were out of balance. Her temperature was rising. Her hormonal levels were unstable. Her fingers trembled. As she opened her medical scanner and ran a self-check, lines of alien code filled the screen. Then came the alert. Unexpected fusion markers detected. Foreign DNA response active. Mating heat triggered by close contact. Velara dropped the scanner. No, it couldn't be. Her species was not meant to respond to humans. Not physically, not emotionally, and definitely not biologically. She looked at her reflection. Her skin was glowing softly in ways it never had before. Her eyes, wide with panic, showed something she never expected to see in herself. Longing, desire, fear. She whispered to herself. This was not supposed to happen. But it had. And now, everything had changed. Asterisk the discovery Velara had always trusted. Her body. It was engineered for grace, strength, and control. Every reaction had a reason. Every emotion was something she could bury. But now, her body was betraying her, growing warmer by the day, tighter in her own skin, heavier in a way she couldn't understand. She hadn't left her room in 2 days. Her skin still shimmered faintly pink from the incident in the ruins. Her heartbeat, once steady and calm, now fluttered at random. And every time she closed her eyes, she saw Daniel's face beneath her, his arms around her, his voice calling her name. She could almost feel him again. That it was driving her mad. She tried to stay logical. She drank water, meditated, and ran daily scans. But this morning, something changed. Her stomach felt strange, tight, like something inside her had shifted. She placed a hand on it pulsed back. Her fingers froze to no. Not possible. With shaking hands, she grabbed her medical device again and activated the deep scan. The screen lit up in pulses of blue and red. She narrowed her eyes at the strange readings. There was a second heartbeat. She stared at the screen. Point 2 heartbeats. Point 1 was hers. The other wasn't. No, she whispered, stepping back as if distance could erase the truth. But the results kept flashing on the scanner. Gestation confirmed. Lifeform compatible. Hybrid development in progress. She couldn't breathe. Velara dropped the scanner and backed against the wall. Her hands covered her mouth, but the shock still escaped as a shaky breath. Pregnant. She was pregnant. With a human child. This had never happened before. Not in the history of her species. They were not compatible with humans, not chemically, not physically, not even emotionally. And yet, here it was, growing inside her. Her thoughts spun. What would the council do if they found out? Would they erase the child? Would they erase her? She remembered the last warning they gave. No emotional involvement. No personal ties. Charm, manipulate, secure. Nothing more. She had already broken every rule, and now there was a life inside her that proved it. Later that day, she opened her door. Daniel was standing outside, raising his hand to knock. He looked surprised to see her. "You okay?" he asked softly. Velara stared at him for a moment. Her lips parted, but the truth caught in her throat. She wanted to tell him. She wanted to scream it. But instead, she only said, "I need some fresh air." Daniel didn't push. He just nodded and walked beside her. They walked through the trees quietly. Birds sang above them. Wind brushed past her ears like a whisper. Velara looked at Daniel. The way he walked. The way he listened, even in silence. She wondered what kind of father he would be. Would he even believe her? Could he understand what was now a part of both of them? She felt his eyes on her. "You're different today," he said gently. She smiled weakly. "So are you." He gave a small laugh. "Maybe we're both changing." Velara placed a hand lightly on her stomach. He had no idea how right he was, and she had no idea how much time they had left before everything around them collapsed. The chase begins. She had just closed the door when the message flashed red across her screen. Violation detected. You are ordered to return immediately for genetic evaluation. Valera's blood ran cold. They knew. She stood frozen, eyes locked on the warning pulsing like a heartbeat. The council had been silent for days, but not idle. They must have been tracking her vitals from orbit. Maybe they knew before she did. And now, they were coming for her. Not just her, but the unborn life inside her. She didn't waste a second. Velara grabbed a small data chip, shoved it into her coat, and rushed to the door. Outside, the sky looked normal. Calm. Quiet. But she knew the silence wouldn't last. She needed to find Daniel. He was the only one she could trust. When she found him near the riverside garden, his face lit up until he saw the fear in her eyes. "They're coming," she whispered. "The council. They know." Daniel's expression turned serious. "What do they want?" Velara looked down. "Not peace. Not diplomacy. Just control. They'll take me. They'll take it." Daniel didn't ask questions. He didn't hesitate. He simply grabbed her hand. "Come with me." He led her through back streets, down hidden paths beneath the city. Old tunnels. Forgotten transit ways. Velara followed closely, heart pounding. She had never run before. Never hid. But now, every step was for something far more important than her mission. They stopped in an old shelter buried under the ground. Flickering lights buzzed above. Dust hung in the air. Daniel handed her a bottle of water. "You're safe here. For now." Velara collapsed onto a bench, her hands covering her face. "This was never supposed to happen," she said, voice shaking. "I was meant to fool you. Charm you. Use you." Daniel sat across from her. "I know." Her eyes snapped up. "You knew?" "I guessed. But I also saw something else," he said gently. "I saw someone who didn't know she could care until she did." Tears stung her eyes. Her species didn't cry, not really. But something wet slipped down her cheek. "I don't know what to do," she whispered. Daniel reached out, placing a hand gently on hers. "You protect what matters," he said, "even if you have to fight everything you once served." A sudden vibration shook the tunnel walls. A deep hum filled the space. Velara stood, eyes wide. That's them. Above, the Council's ships were entering Earth's skies, silent, silver, and cold. They won't stop until they have me. Daniel looked up. Then they'll have to go through me first. Valera's breath caught in her throat. No one had ever said that to her. No one had ever stood for her. And now, with her child growing inside her, and the galaxy turning against her, she finally understood what it meant to be human. It meant choosing love over fear, even in the face of a war. The child of two worlds, the cabin was small, hidden deep in the forest, wrapped in layers of old Earth tech and natural camouflage. Outside, the skies still echoed with quiet thunder, Council ships patrolling above like silent predators. But inside, there was stillness. A warmth not from fire, but from life. Velara lay on a soft bed, sweat on her brow, her hands gripping the edge of a blanket. Her body trembled, her breathing short. Daniel sat beside her, holding her hand tightly, whispering words she barely understood but somehow calmed her. "It's almost time," he said gently, brushing a damp strand of hair from her cheek. "You're not alone." Velara gave a faint nod, lips parted in pain, eyes filled with something beyond fear, a fierce, burning hope. Hours passed. Then, in the quiet breath before dawn, the child was born. Velara wept, not from weakness, but from wonder. She stared at the tiny being in her arms. Skin soft and pale with a faint glow, small fingers curling in the air. The baby opened its eyes like Daniel's, but with a faint silver ring around the pupils, the perfect fusion. Half human, half alien, fully alive. Daniel was speechless. He knelt beside Velara, eyes locked on the child, tears silently falling down his face. "He's beautiful." "No," Velara whispered. "He's impossible." And yet, he was here. But the moment of peace didn't last. The deep hum shook the earth beneath them. Council dropships. They had found the location. Velara stood, weak but firm. She handed the child to Daniel. "If they see him, they'll take him." Daniel shook his head. "Then they'll have to kill me first." She looked at him with eyes full of emotion. "No, they'll have to see what we've created." She walked outside. The sky was filled with lights, ships descending like falling stars. Council officers stepped forward, weapons ready. Velara raised her hands. "You wanted control," she said. "You wanted obedience. But this," she pointed toward the cabin, "this is more powerful than your commands. This is the future." The officers hesitated. Then, from behind her, Daniel stepped out holding the child. Gasps echoed. One officer scanned the child. The results lit up in alien glyphs. Genetic fusion confirmed. Stable. Viable. Evolutionary advancement. They all fell silent. Velara spoke again. "You came for a diplomat. You found a mother, a human, and something new." A long pause, then. The lead officer lowered his weapon. "We were wrong," he said slowly. "This changes everything." The ships began to rise again, returning to the stars. They would report this, not as failure, but as history. Back inside, Velara sat down and cradled her child once more. "We were never meant to fall in love," she whispered. Daniel smiled. "But we did." And in that small, quiet cabin beneath the stars, a new chapter for both species began, not through war or charm or power, but through one impossible child and the two hearts that dared to create him.